Hi, um, I'm Amy, and I'm on a journey that I'm sharing with all of you. So we'll see how this unfolds together. Um, I didn't make a video yesterday, and I wanted to talk about this because the process I went through, just deciding not to make a video was cumbersome. And it's one of the things that I'm um, really intentionally focusing on lately. And, I talked about it a little bit in previous videos about how my mantra for 2025 is I do what I want. And a lot of that is not externally focused. It's a lot to do with what's going on in my brain versus what's going on in my intuition. And when I say I do what I want, it's really me saying, well, I follow my intuition. So, like, shut the brain off. Um, and that's what happened yesterday. Was just hanging out and I thought about doing a video and it was getting kind of late and my dogs were just so snuggly and every time I moved they got a little bit closer and I just didn't want to get up and disturb that peace and I thought it's cold out, it would be great to just put a movie on and just snuggle my dogs and it just felt so good in the moment and then my brain was like, what about the video? And I was like, I do what I want because my intention is to share this process. And I'm doing that. And it's why I don't make New Year's resolutions because it's it's almost like you set a New Year's resolution and then it feels almost contractual, And I feel like for a lot of people, and I'm one of those people, as soon as I'm off, right, the resolution, it's like I give up completely. So I try instead to set intentions and I try not to be too prescriptive in these intentions, right? So my thought was since I'm not exactly sure what I'm looking for, what's going to happen, what's going to unfold, where I'm headed with this, I'm just going to pop on daily and talk about whatever's happening for me. So my original intention was to do this every day. And, that's what was harping at me in my brain yesterday. It was just like, well, if you don't do it every day, and I finally had to just call bullshit on that. Like, nope, you're not going to bully me because it doesn't have to be every day. It's when my intuition tells me, all right, let's do this. And if my intuition tells me to do something differently that day, then that's what I'm going to do because I do what I want. um, so that was yesterday. And then today, I was going through some notes on my phone. So I have all of these notes on my phone, things that I've written, just little notes for ideas of things that I want to teach or things that I want to talk about. And it's just all these notes. So I was going through, and one of them caught my eye, and it just says, Death, Taxes, Santa. And I thought, that is what I'm going to name this video. Death, Taxes, Santa. And it all makes perfect sense to me to have those three words together. But something that I'm really passionate about is that we don't talk about death enough. We just don't. It's one of those taboo subjects. No one wants to talk about it. It makes people feel bad when it comes up. People are like, let's change the subject. Even people, talking about their own mortality or, if something's coming up, it's like, no, everything's going to be fine. You're just worrying about nothing, right? And it's like they try to coax you out of talking about it. And it's a completely natural part of life. And it will happen to all of us. And there's this expression that's like the only two things you can count on are death and taxes, right? Which is not even true if you consider the entirety of the world, right? There are people in this world who don't pay taxes. That's a very limiting statement. But death is for sure. And we don't talk about it. And I really think we need to start talking about it like immediately, like as children. And it needs to just be a natural part of what we talk about. Like, what are you going to be when you grow up? Or, and what happens after death? Because I think there's a lot of ambiguity and there's a lot of, different opinions. But I think on the whole, if we address it in a way that is not made to seem like it's bad, right? I think, it can be really beautiful. And I think it can be really empowering to not have this fear of death or this feeling like you can't talk about it. I remember a few years ago, almost 5 years ago now, I had to have back surgery. And I'll be honest, I was nervous going into this. I mean, they were literally separating my spinal cord from a tumor on my spine that it was attached to. And so it's like, okay, they're going to be cutting really, really close to my spinal cord. I'm a little freaked out. And I wrote a will, which I'm surprised I hadn't done before, like right after my divorce, because I had something when I was married, but this was just, just for me. And I can remember the reactions when I tried to tell people, right? Like, hey, I have this, this is where I'm going to keep it. Things like that. And it was like, you're being silly. Everything's going to be fine. And it's like, okay, well, maybe that's true. And it's nice going into it to know that I've sort of made my intentions very clear, just in case. Or if not now, in case something else happens, right? And then that peace of mind to know that I've decided what happens to me. And I've decided how everything should play out, right? And imagine if we all had this feeling that, it wasn't so taboo to talk about what we want after we're gone. And, maybe it would alleviate some of, you see these like families who are torn apart after a death and they argue over like what should happen or who gets what, or, these crazy things. And it's like, it's just, we could talk about it. And, I just feel like we don't. And I'm really passionate about making it part of our conversations and our planning and it not being this big, dark cloud. And, with kids, it's like kids are so intuitive. Like kids, if you are trying to sugarcoat something or, maybe like you're telling some of the truth, but not the whole truth. It's like kids know. Kids just know. So I can remember several years ago when my boys were little, my mother-in-law's dog had passed. And this was a dog that had been in the family and the boys were close to her and, since they were born. So we knew it was going to be hard for the boys. And she asked my husband and I at the time if she could tell the boys. She wanted to tell the boys, about the dog. So We show up for Christmas Eve, and she has a picture of the dog with Santa that she had taken, um, at one of, I don't know if it was at the vet or the mall or one of those things where it's like, bring your pet to see Santa. And she explained to the boys that the dog had been sick and she was able to go to the North Pole to be with Santa, and she wouldn't be sick anymore, but we wouldn't be able to see her again. Because, sort of like, once you go to the North Pole, like, that's, you're not coming back. This was the story. And I remember trying to be really, um, just neutral in the moment, right? Not making any strong reactions, but I could feel the cringe. It was just, I knew this was not going to end well. So, the boys were certainly sad and, we'll miss her. And they just, it ended there. Not 20 seconds after we get in the car that night, my oldest, who, God, he was probably 7 or 8 at the time, says, "Did Tess die?" And now I'm in a position where it's not just explaining, yes, she died, but it's also explaining, why couldn't we just say she died? What was with the whole North Pole story? And I really wish we could just be more direct with kids, right? Another thing that happened when my boys were very little, which was really hard to navigate, and I think having the ability to have these conversations more openly would have helped too. There was a kid at their preschool, and one summer, their family had a 4th of July party. Everyone went to set off fireworks. He decided he wanted to go for a swim. Lo and behold, he drowned. And it was heartbreaking. I mean, so heartbreaking. Just this little boy. And like, my boys are in this preschool, my 2 older boys at the time. And it was this realization for them that, like, wait a minute, kids die? Because, like, we only talk about old people and, pets that are sick, right? But like kids, like a kid that I just saw last week, and that's a hard conversation. And how to have that conversation without scaring them, or having them sort of just completely freak out. And it was hard, but again, it's like, because we don't talk about it and we make it seem like it's this, like, way late in life, kind of like, you don't need to think about that, you don't need to know about that. And of course, our hope is that, everyone lives to a nice old age. But the reality is, that's not always the case. It also is hard when I think about the number of school shootings that have happened since my boys have been in school. And, you can't not talk about it because they're hearing things or they see something on TV. I mean, just even watching their own programs, and then, breaking news or whatever it is, they hear about it. And again, it's like, school's supposed to be a safe space, right? And how do you talk to them about how these horrific things can happen and how kids are dying? Again, kids are dying. and at school. I mean, that's like feels crazy, and you want to be able to say like, well, those things don't happen, or that's just something that happened in a movie, but that's not the world we live in now. And as much as I wish it weren't the case, I think we have to be having conversations about these things, because I think it I think you can't not think about it, but then we don't talk about it. So, and again, it's like, I opened the call talking about how my brain was just like giving me shit yesterday. Um, and like this happens all the time, and your brain will take a small idea or an incident and blow it out of proportion, right? It's like, well, why would she say that? And, like, did she mean this or did she mean that? Or was she serious? Or, you know what I mean? Like anything, our brain just blows it out of proportion. So you can imagine as a kid, something happens, you're hearing about it, it's not a subject we talk about openly, and your mind is going to make stuff up. And I think it causes so much anxiety. Um, and I think, the solution is being able to have open and honest conversations about it. And, I don't know where that starts or what the right language is, especially when you think about religions and belief systems and just parenting in general, and how um, you know every parent is different, and but then kids go to school and talk about this stuff. So I think if it just became a natural part of the conversation that we were having, just as humans, as parents, as individuals, as in relationships with parents, right? Another thing that happens is, as parents get older, they start to make their wishes known. And, because we don't talk about it, it can be really uncomfortable. Um, and again, it's like, oh, like we'll talk about that later, or, not today. Um, but the comfort that, our parents or our loved ones could feel in that moment, to just know that, like, okay, I've made my wishes clear, can alleviate so much of this anxiety for them. And, but I think waiting till we're old is too late again, because, you know, things happen. Or, I just had a friend, um, early 50s, who passed of cancer, and from the time of the diagnosis until they were no longer here was just a matter of a couple months. And at that point, you're not in the right headspace to really be thinking about, well, what are my wishes, or what do I want to happen, or, what is my legacy? What is it that I've left behind? And what do I want people to remember about me? And, I mean, these are things that I think are important to consider. And sometimes we're just doing it too late, because we're only doing it when we're faced with like a more imminent death or an illness, or um and it's just too late. So I feel like this is kind of a heavy topic, but I'm just really passionate about it. And I've done a lot of work with, thinking about death, and um like your human physical form, death versus your spirit and what happens to your spirit, and, you know, talking about like what happened in past lives, and really thinking about how we're all connected and what that cycle is and all of this. I'm like so passionate about it. Um, and I'm actually doing a lot of writing, and this is something that I really want to um, have an offering for. Something, you know, like to be able to have these conversations and to be able to talk about what happens and what's next, and to put something together that is sort of kid friendly is really important to me as well. I wish I had had more resources when my boys were little and these conversations were happening. So that is where my death, taxes, and Santa note came from. Something I'm, again, just really passionate about, and think there needs to be more open communication about it. And yeah, so I'll leave you with that.